Welcome to Through the Fear, the podcast that reminds you life begins where fear ends. Here, we share the stories of everyday people who faced their fears and discovered the incredible strength that lies on the other side. Brought to you by Wolf Mindset, this is more than a podcast. It's an invitation to find your courage, your purpose, and maybe even your pack. This is Through the Fear. Let's take the journey together to fear less, live more.
Brother, I've been looking forward to this one, man. It's glad to hear you're doing better, like much better than when we talked last week.
Yeah, you heard my voice, didn't you? And a few of these guys know that I was a bit poorly, and I'm still not 100% right. I'm not one to violin too much. I did a little bit of sympathy from the other half. But yeah, it knocked me out. Throat was gone. It's been over 2.5 weeks. And today I still feel burnt out. So it's going to be some other new strain of something that's hit me. And, you know, it hits men harder.
We're big babies about it.
Absolutely.
That's what I'm told by my wife.
Yeah, people wonder why you're still going to work, and it's literally to get more sympathy. So I actually want people to go, oh, you go home. You go home. And I go, oh, okay, all right, you sure?
And then we get home and we don't want to lay around, but we do lay around, and then we're miserable because we're laying around and not up doing something. I'm with you, man. 100%.
Yeah, it's an awful spiral. Yeah, I still like to get to the gym, but I haven't gone to the gym. I tell you what, Adam, we're on a roll already. We're going to go straight into this podcast and go straight into this casual chat that we're doing anyway, because it's great. So I'll introduce you. So thank you, everybody who's listening to Through the Fear podcast. I'm your host, Ian Q. I'm a hypnotist, NLP practitioner, and I run Wolf Mindset and Through the Fear podcast. I'm very pleased and excited to bring Adam Peters. Now, before I hand you over, Adam, I always like to say how I meet my guests. And then I like to give it lots of bigging up, and then I'll hand you over. So this chap, Adam, was sprung up on my LinkedIn profile. This guy who's basically saying on the end of every post, I'm going to fuck your transition. And those words are to veterans who are struggling to change their life from one place to another. And his posts were inspirational, they were real, they said how it was, and the amount of comments and likes and love he gets for each post clearly means that Adam is doing something right. And that's what I loved. And I thought, I got to talk to this guy. And we talked, and what a lovely fellow he is. So, Adam, thank you for letting me introduce you, but I'm going to hand it over to you to introduce yourself. So, Adam, take it away, buddy.
Oh, man. Hey guys, I'm Adam Peters, founder of the Strategic Veteran, and I really am here to unfuck veteran transition, man. That's what I'm about. I'm a 12.5-year Army veteran, 4 combat deployments, 3 to Iraq, 1 to Afghanistan, for almost 50 months in theater. I did the TAP thing that they tell you to do, followed their blueprint, and still had an 8.5-year struggle in my own transition. And I knew that I had to do something to, I guess, stop the 22 a day, man. I couldn't sit there and keep getting 3, 4, 5 notifications a month to dead battle buddies. And then being in the Facebook groups and seeing people, we got to do something about this, yet nobody gets off their ass and does anything. So I decided to take some fucking action. I didn't have a clue what I was doing. Here we are. So I was just on another call because it's super uncomfortable. I didn't set out to get a follows. What I realized is I didn't build this platform for me. I built this platform for my entire community, the veteran community. So that's my mission, is to leverage this community to put people on, to move people further ahead in their journeys, and use it for a force for good, not to collect a bunch of likes and be I just try to present as authentic and real as possible. I think Ian might be able to speak to this since we talked. I'm the same in my posts as in a meeting with you as in real life. Change who I am. I'm done bending to fit into whoever's fucking box they want to try and throw me in. I'll be Adam. And if you don't like, there's other people out there doing incredible work that may be for you. And a lot of
oh mate, I love that. Authenticity, isn't it? I found that if you're not authentic, you start to pretend to be someone you're not. You're going to get anxious, you're going to get stressed. And that's why in my community, people who know me or get to know me over time, they know I'm pretty mad. I'm a little bit crazy, a little bit wired. And I am like that with my clients, with my friends. I'm quite high energy. And not everyone's cup of tea. That's absolutely fine. But I find that, and I tell my clients this as well, people I work with, if you keep on wearing a mask for so long, trying to fit into a space where you're not supposed to fit in, or be in a group that you don't align with, eventually your body's going to start kicking your butt, going, what are you doing? Who are you pretending to be? And you're going to start feeling it. And I know you say you don't do it for likes, but that's a wonderful way of putting it. I think being authentic gets you seen by the right people, and that's why you get that traction. But showing the reason why you're doing it is to help people is where you know you've got a good egg, basically, Adam.
Yeah.
So, Adam, I'm going to start off. So, obviously, you know what these veterans have gone through, probably from personal experience. So, you must have looked back from seeing these veterans going, I can help these people. So, tell us, if it's okay with you sharing,
Mhm.
what was it like being in the army? And was there any stuff that you're happy to share which, really you found difficult from being in the army?
Man, I love the army.
Mm,
I think a lot of times with my content, people get confused, like I'm bashing the army
yeah,
or don't appreciate my service. I'm very aware of what the army did for me, and it's responsible for the creation of who I am as a
yeah,
person. It's a big, big, big chapter in my life from 17 to 30 years old. I mean, that's not insignificant. So I'll caveat everything that I'm saying with the army was the way out of small town America for me, where there's not a lot of opportunity. I grew up in Southern Indiana, in the farm towns of Southern Indiana, and so everything is family owned, right? Family owned farms, family owned construction companies for generations and generations. That's just how small town America works. I imagine it's probably like that in places in Europe as well, right? And so for me, I knew the world was a big place and the army was something that I could leverage to travel. I'm creating
yeah.
videos of repelling.
I was just going to quickly interrupt. I think army adverts, as cool as they are here in England, where there's all and people coming out of the water like swamps
Yeah.
and with a big machine gun. You're like, oh,
Oh yeah. 100%, man. Yeah. And as a 17-year-old kid, of course, like, I grew up outside playing army with sticks in the creek and, all that stuff, like pretending we're soldiers. So for me, I saw it as an opportunity to travel the world. That's me as a person. That's my mission in life is to have 100% total control over my time so that I can go fly across the pond and have a coffee with you,
yeah,
Ian, or with you, grab a beer if I drank still, Lewis, so I want to collect passes, stamps in my passport. Come to find out, nobody stamps your passport anymore. So I'm kind of getting screwed on that. But
yeah,
I'd rather live for experiences, and travel has always been one of those. I've always been fascinated with history. The Aztec and Mayan ruins in Latin and South America. Ancient Egypt is probably one of my favorites. Want to get over there and see Stonehenge, all that stuff, right? So I figured the army was the way that I could do that. And so I love the army, man. I don't know that I was the best soldier while I was in. There's a lot of, personal development stuff, some mental health issues, some childhood trauma that I needed to get past that I wouldn't realize until I was, 38 years old. That, had I sorted those things out, my career would have looked a whole lot different. But I have zero regrets. I don't have
mm,
anything bad to say about the army other than, I realized this problem with transition. And I think it's my duty to, call it like I see it, man. Like,
mm,
why are we ignoring something that, you can go look at the data and I know, maybe for you guys over there across the pond, I know it's similar because I hear, the Brits reach out to me, the New Zealanders, Australians, Denmark. I just got one from, I don't even remember, some weird country. I really didn't even think they had an army. He just joined my community yesterday, but this is a universal problem. And so what I realized was in the United States military, you sign up and get education benefits in the form of the post 9/11 GI Bill, where they want you to go to college. And then they tell you this lie that because you're a veteran, everybody wants to hire you and you're going to have no trouble in a six-figure job, slap you on the ass. Well, I think that's a blanket fix, right?
yeah,
Because I'm an individual and my journey in life is different than yours. And so, while I was in from 17 to 30, the army became my entire identity. Be the best infantryman that you can be in support of the global war on terror for the United States Army, right? I didn't have those formative years in college, those 4 years of college to experience, being away from home, meeting people who grew up in different places, right? I get to experience that in the army culture from different backgrounds, but we're all still building the same identity, right? They're programming us to do one thing, do it to the best of our ability in support of the mission. And so, I didn't really get to develop as a person to understand what are my core beliefs, values, passions, interests, and learn how to define what success looks like to me. And so when I started doing my podcast, I originally started doing that with the idea that we get out of the Army, and one of the bigger
Yeah.
there's no greater purpose than defending your country or serving something bigger than yourself. And so that goes away. I thought the path back to purpose was entrepreneurship, right? It's a never ending mission that you control and you make the rules with. And you can treat that however you want. Like there's constantly something that you have. As I was doing the podcast, we get 15, 20 episodes in. I realized the bigger problem is in the transition, and that a lot of guys and gals that I'm talking to are feeling and thinking and perceiving things the same way that I did when I was transitioning out. And so I started digging into it and having more conversations and kind of shifting my focus to transition. And that's how we landed where we're at now. And I know that was a long-winded answer.
Thank you for that, Adam. It resonates with what I talk about as well, right? In the heart of what we do in Wolf Mindset, we call it the RISE journey, and the center of it is identity. After that is health, such as rest, intake, strength, and empowerment. And then you can start overcoming your anxieties and stresses. But in the middle is identity, which is personality styles, which we use e-colors. But also it is your purpose. What's driving you? Who do you want to be? If you don't know that, you're floating around. And I find that if your identity can, and I've done a course called identity shifting, because you get a sports star who breaks their leg. You get a guy who's in the army for 20 years, 30 years, and suddenly you're out. You get any law enforcement gets made redundant. So anyone who gets attached to a role, even breaking up with a huge relationship, people then become lost, and that's a dangerous time because they can't find another purpose. They go downhill, and they don't. Sometimes it's like, well, there's no one. Who do I find? Which is where they're
Right.
obviously finding you, Adam, because they don't even know what it is that they need. They don't realise it's an identity problem. So, Adam, you've come up with this great way of doing it. So, Army, it sounds like it was great for your identity, and then transitioning out. So we've got the podcast is through the fear and things like that. Did you have any massive fears, any mental health barriers you had to jump over to get out of the army? Is
All
there
of
any
them.
stories which happened?
Yeah, man, it's just kind of one big story, really.
Yeah.
I was med boarded out. So this would have been my 22nd year. June of this year would have been the year that I was supposed to originally retire. That was my plan. And so, having my career cut 10 years short and not really getting to go through the transition, the typical way that you would is if you're retiring or just ETSing out. I didn't have all those resources. I was dealing with, a whole med board process and all of that. But I'm actually writing a book about this that I hope to release by the end of the year, which is my transition story from November 2nd, 2015 was where I stopped. I experienced all those emotions. Like while I was in the med board process, I became a raging alcoholic. And I mean,
Wow.
to the tune of 2 gallons of whiskey a week, just what I was buying at my house. But that doesn't include what I was spending walking to the bar every single night for 5 months.
And were you able to function with that amount, drinking that often as well?
Yeah, so this is how it went, man. When you start back then, I can't speak for the Army now. I've been out a decade, right? But back then, when you entered the med board, it was their goal to get you off their books as soon as possible because they need to backfill that slot with another leader who's capable of going to do the job. So they sent me over to range control. And we all know that that's basically, where all good leaders go to die when they're on their way out.
Oh,
Range
mate.
control, it's such a sweet gig though, man, because it's 3 days on, 3 days off. And that is the last place I needed to be with the head state that I was in. Because remember, I'm thinking I'm going to 22 years. I've got 10 years left. I have no plan. I don't know what I'm interested in to be able to leverage my GI Bill benefits. I'm losing all the structure, the orders, there's always a boss, right? Like always somebody to tell you where to be, when to be there, what uniform to be in, all of that. That's all disappearing for me overnight.
Mm-hmm.
And I hadn't realized that, I need to start considering these things yet. I just knew my career was over and I don't know what the hell I'm going to model.
Are you happy to share, Adam, as to what happened for you to go to the bottle? Is there something that happened in the army which...
I mean, so, I had just come down on the list to make E7. My sequence number, I probably wouldn't have made it for like a year or get pen for a year or whatever. I had, 4 deployments. I was medevaced on my 3rd deployment. They had to rebuild my foot. I shattered my foot. And then wear and tear on your shoulders. And, being an infantry guy, carrying weight, doing that, 12 months, 16 months, and 9 months, like that's a lot of, back to back to back. I think the longest, we call it dwell time is what it's called when you come back from a deployment and you're stateside. I never had more than 11 months of dwell time between deployments. That takes a beating, man.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had going on, I think April 11th when I have hip surgery, that'll be surgery number 13 to put me back together with all the injuries and stuff. So in Afghanistan, unknown to me, I had torn my labrum in my left shoulder and I had pain, but like not enough to really do anything about it. And so shortly after we got back home, I was in the gym lifting and it just quit. And then it just ripped. 60% of my labrum in my left shoulder is missing. For those of you who don't know, the labrum is the cartilage that holds the ball and socket together. So now my shoulder will fall out of place. It's just extreme instability. And so, that's it. You can't continue to be an infantryman and do your job. You're a liability at that point. So, my career is over overnight. Like with one appointment to the surgeon, that's it. It's over. You're being med boarded. So what do I do? Like I just lost my entire future in my mind. And so I guess that's why I turned to the bottle. I mean, it's natural in that environment anyway, because drinking is like what you do for fun, so like drinking fun. So let me just go have a bunch of fun. I just didn't know that it was going to get that out of control. And being on range control is like I'm only working for 3 days, which gives me the opportunity to drink all night, go to bed when the bar closes, get up telling myself I'm not still drunk. And I definitely could have been drunk on duty, charged range control. So like, I didn't really have to work, if you will. Like, I just got to sit in the truck and have somebody else drive me around. So, and in the 3 days that I'm off, there's no telling, man. I would pass out when the sun came up. Like whenever my body just couldn't take any more alcohol. So I did that for about 5 months until
I was about to say, would you say you were close to rock bottom at that point, or was there even further to fall?
No, I climbed out a little bit. I beat alcohol on my own.
Yeah. Well done.
I had a visit with my dad and my dad, begged me. He basically looked me in the eye and said, "You need to quit drinking. You're killing yourself." And he was in tears when he said that. Now, why is that so impactful on me? Because my father is my hero. My father, I watched what he dealt with as, divorcing my mom and as we were growing up, the fight he had to fight to have us kids in his life in spite of my mom's attempts to keep us from him. So, he never said a bad word about my mom either growing up. And, the opposite was true when I was with my mom. She would say all the bad things about my dad. And so long story short, my dad is my hero. And so I knew I had a problem when he dropped me off at the airport. And the first thing I did was just go get a 777 at the bar once I got through security. Like my own father is my hero and his words weren't enough to wake me up.
Yeah.
So a few weeks later, I was in my apartment, getting ready to go to work one morning and I started throwing up dark red blood in the shower. I've got to stop this. Like this cannot do this anymore. I mean, you guys know when you drink like that, binge drinking for months on end, genuinely never feel good. You always feel like shit. And so the way I beat it, not knowing anything about alcohol withdrawals or anything, was I went and bought a PlayStation 4 because I didn't have any responsibility. I didn't have to go to work, right? I wasn't accountable to anybody. They basically forgot I existed. I just locked myself in my apartment, turned my phone off, or turned it on silent. I couldn't really turn it off to get in trouble, but I just didn't answer any of those people who were enabling me to do it. And so for an entire month, I played video game and stopped drinking.
Wow.
And that's how I beat it.
I was going to say, before we go to this transition, Adam, from that world to the next, because I'm excited to the flip side of it. How was all your tours and how did you cope with those? Were they the tours when you went to Afghan and all those other places?
Man, I might be weird in this, but like I was doing my job, man. So like I didn't really have any qualms with the stuff I had seen and done in combat. I think the moral injury stuff, why did this 22-year-old kid who's on his first deployment have to die when I should have, or, me having to go pick up, buddies' body parts after they step on IEDs or get blown up, right? That had way more of an effect on me. Not, I guess, not nearly as intensely as you would expect, to be honest, man. I think there's an element of me that just kind of had, this notion like, I'm a trained killer. That's what the infantry job description and here in the U.S. Army anyway, from our 7-8 says, your objective as an infantryman is to close with and destroy the enemy as violently as possible. it doesn't get more clear than that what your role in the military is. And I mean, I was good at it, like I did it 4 times for almost 5 years. So like you get pretty good at it, you develop tactics and so I never really, I mean, plus they're trying to kill you. You know what I mean? Like they're just as I would even say more evil about it than we were. And so I didn't have a lot of qualms with combat. I don't think that stuff would affect me till way later. And it was more the moral injury stuff as my buddies were starting to commit suicide and, things like that, like realizing I have this stance on suicide. Like, I think it's a selfish thing that you do. Don't understand the impact that that has on the people in your life that truly do care about you. Yet from their perspective, I also understand like where they're at and they're not thinking about those people because they don't have the emotional capacity to think about those people. But in my mind, it was like, you're selfish. Like I could name 15 guys right now who died overseas that would love to trade places with you right now. Like how selfish can you be? As my buddies were committing suicide, I would really have issues with, why did he have to die or why did they have to lose a leg? Why couldn't I have done a better job to prevent that situation that caused this massive triple amputee event? You know what I mean?
Yeah, so thanks for sharing that, Adam. We got a guy here called Simon. We've got some great people from our Wolf Mindset group, and we talked about identity earlier. And Simon was saying basically he feels that the identity shifting also applies to illness. Becoming disabled can also be a shift in identity, and I think that's similar to what you're saying. A huge injury meant you had to make this huge shift, and obviously we then had coping mechanisms, and yours for that little bit was alcohol. Sort of numbing the pain. We always find something to numb the pain. Sometimes it's healthy. It can be fitness and exercise, but even some people can go too far with that, can't you? You can do some people just run and run and run and run and run to the
Yeah.
ground. But you found that a good old PS4 was a good focus to start shifting. So let's talk about this transition. So we've gone through what I like to call through the fear, through the things that were holding you back, through your difficulties through drinking from this PS4. So tell us about your road to recovery with a PS4 and life after that, Adam.
Yeah, man. Destiny, the video game was just coming out. And so I was like, maybe I can play this or whatever. I really didn't know what to do. I just knew I couldn't keep going to the bars and keep
Yeah.
drinking. And so, it seemed logical. Like if I just lock myself in my apartment and entertain myself with video games, that like maybe that's a solution.
Isn't Destiny that really long-winded game as well, which you could play for like not for it's a perfect game to play with, isn't it?
I didn't know that at the time. It just looked like something that I could get on board with.
You can't finish
So
it either, can you? It's like a whole world.
no, yeah. So I did that, man, and did the whole week of withdrawals thing, not knowing that alcohol withdrawals could kill you. I don't think they were nearly as bad as some people experience them. I mean, as you can see, I carry a half-gallon water bottle with me. That's always been me. I at least had enough sense when I was drinking to drink enough water also.
Yeah.
So, I think that might have helped or whatever. I don't know the science behind it. I know I'm lucky, right? Like most people don't beat that on their own. But also, I had my qualms with spirituality or religion of God, whatever you want to say at that point in my life also. So like knowing that AA is really rooted in religion and God, at least belief in God, that was not an option for me. I was very agnostic and not open-minded to that at all. I got to the point where I was drinking so much that all of my friends who were benefiting from my drinking, because I would buy drinks for everybody just to have somebody to drink with, when they tapped out, they were like, dude, I cannot go out with you tonight. I can't keep up anymore.
Yeah.
Fast forward to while I'm trying to get sober and beat it. Now they're all texting me like, hey man, we're going out. We're going to drink. Leave that behind.
Yeah.
So really only having to go to post to check in once a week with my person. And that was the deal that we worked out.
Well done,
For 2 or 3 months after that, I would not allow myself to go to any establishment, to include restaurants that served alcohol. Mainly when I say restaurants, I just wouldn't sit in the bar so I wouldn't be tempted. I reached this point where I got this level of self-awareness where I was like, well, I'm not going to let alcohol control my life. And so I'm going to see if I can go to the bar and hang out with my friends and try and have a good time without drinking. And so for the next 6 months, I would do that. I would go to the bar and I would just have ice water with my friends. And I really proved to myself that I had control over it.
It's good that your friends were happy that you weren't a drinker. The reason why I say that is, that sounds odd. When I talked about identity earlier, some people who know you as being a drinker or a party animal, some friends aren't happy with a transition.
Oh, yeah.
Did you find some friends were a bit found it
Oh
really
yeah.
difficult to go,
Yes.
who is this Adam who's not
Yeah.
drinking? And maybe we're like, come on, have a drink. And how was
Oh
that?
yeah. I lost several friends that way,
Yeah,
man. And it really, you can look at that two ways. Were they really my friend, or were they just getting a free ride because I
absolutely.
was in a point where I was paying for all the drinks, and they didn't have money like I had money at the time, right? Fresh off a deployment, I learned a little bit about saving money,
But
that
your real friends stayed. Your real friends who don't care about that side of it, they were the ones who's with you.
well, and what you find too is those are the friends who were rooting for you all along, the
Mm,
ones who were behind your back saying, "Man, I really wish this dude would quit. He doesn't understand what he's doing to himself." And, I think in a fucked up way, that's a blessing in disguise, right? Like that's God looking out for me. Like there are people in your life, you just don't know it yet. You know what I mean?
absolutely. So,
So so yeah, man, beat the alcohol and then started the transition process, November 2nd, 2015. It took me about 3 weeks to figure out that I could go to flight school on the GI Bill. I was over the moon. I thought flying was my dream. So I did the college thing, man. I got an applied science and technology in professional pilot. I'm a commercially rated pilot.
wow.
I tried to explore that as a career field, but I ran out of money and some of the benefits here. I got stuck with a bad counselor who wouldn't help me employ those benefits to finish, some of the higher level flight school stuff. So I pivoted and went and got a 4-year degree, a bachelor's in business and psychology at a really interesting school. I call it a choose your own adventure school. You literally pick all the classes you want to take and build your own degree, and there's no grades. But I argue that it's harder because you do a self evaluation, do a professor evaluation, and then you do a joint evaluation to get all of your credit. So to me, it's harder in that you can't fake the funk. You have to, because if you go with a self eval that is making you the shining star, yet your professor didn't see any of the work that you did because you never turned it in, and makes you look like a polished turd instead of a shining star.
Yeah.
There's no way you're going to get full credit in your joint eval because you can't prove that you did the work. So, I call those 4 years that I was in college really a false transition because, my identity was to be a college student to get the degree so that I can get that 6-figure job with that degree when I get out, right? Because that's what the TAP class had taught me was you're successful when you have a degree and you have a 6-figure salary, right? So the real transition started when I started looking for a career. And while I was in college, I had worked retail for a family owned vape shop where I started to learn the behind the scenes of business. Then I managed a gun store where I was so good at it that I was doing everything and the owner wasn't even showing up anymore. I was ordering, I was doing payroll, I was literally running the business and he wasn't. And I
Yeah.
was just like, this isn't going to work for me. So I made the decision to, apply to a bunch of different jobs and I found myself in the insurance industry. And this is where we start going all the way to rock bottom because
Ah,
I don't know how insurance works, where you guys are at or whatever, but it's a scummy business here. It's probably a scummy business across the world. It just, anyway, long story short, I found myself with this opportunity. They got me hook, line, and it's really lucrative. I can't argue that. Like you sell somebody an insurance policy and you get paid pretty handsome on that insurance policy. And if you do that 1,000 times, you can imagine the kind of money and it's all recurring revenue too, because if they renew the policy, you get that still, right? So I fell for it. And what I was doing was I was knocking doors, selling whole life insurance, final expense to the poorest 1/3 of Americans. People that can't afford this have no fiscal education whatsoever. They can barely afford to eat. I'm driving people to the bank in 2021 to open bank accounts because they've never had a bank account in their lives,
wow.
just so I can draft premiums. And really started to mess with me emotionally in a big, big way, man, because, you know, when I say these people are poor, I've sat at tables where people have trees growing through the roof of their house. I've had cockroaches crawl up my legs at their dinner table. I talked to a woman whose kids took her social security check and they stop by once every 2 weeks when the check comes in to get the check, cash the check, fill her fridge with the minimal amount of groceries and go blow the rest of her money. Meanwhile, she's half blind and doesn't have legs,
Oh,
so, and she's in her mid 80s, So that really, really started to mess with me and made me feel just like a terrible human being.
Well,
So I left that.
you're not a terrible human being, Adams, because all the stuff that you've gone through, in your life, and the wars and stuff, like you say that actually, well, this is part of the role. But when you went into this role, this insurance, right here was going, I can't do this, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Not for me, man. So I actually went broke doing that because, they didn't teach me, the things that I needed to know. They didn't teach me how to massage a book of business, how to follow up with the book of business, how to, convince that person not to cancel their policy so that, I now end up with a chargeback. And let me give you a little context. If I sold $100 a month premium, I would get advanced 9 months commission on that, which would be $900. But they cancel that after the first month. I now owe the insurance carrier $800 back.
Ah,
So in my mind, I can't spend money for 9 months, right? Like if I sell you a policy today, if I want to cover my ass, I cannot spend a dime of that money for 9 months because for, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 months. And so I literally went broke because nobody taught me about chargebacks, how you save chargebacks, how you convince people not to save it, how you can limp them along, which I'm kind of glad they didn't because that's just taking advantage of somebody even more, right? Like they already can't afford it. I shouldn't have been selling it to them in the first place. But then to limp them along and squeeze them for everything they're worth, that's not the kind of
no,
shit that I
I
am.
can see that as well. I hope you did a really cool sort of Hollywood style I quit with your boss when you left that
Yeah,
place.
yeah.
Did
I
you
just called
did you
them.
throw
I
something
just
on the
called them
table?
and
I quit, man.
no, I just called him and said, "You don't need to send me any more fucking leads. I'm done. I can't do this. Bye. Don't ever contact me again." I was just like, "Don't. I'm not doing this." But from there, I pivoted to because I already had the licenses and all the stuff that I needed. I started working from home, so I wasn't having to travel, selling health insurance, and that's not nearly as lucrative, but it's also not scummy. It was kind of rewarding because I was educating families on what health plans are, what co-insurance and deductibles and all of that stuff are. And, there's a light at the end of the tunnel with that. I mean, it wasn't the greatest thing ever. I mean, it's not sexy to make 50 cold calls a day, to people who have already been contacted by 7 or 8 other insurance agents. You got to have some thick skin, but
Yeah,
it is pretty rewarding when you do get somebody and you can help
good.
encourage them. That dried up because the company I was working for that supplied the leads, they had an issue with their lead gen software. So for 10 days, I didn't have leads coming in. And you guys know as well as I do, 10 days is enough to ruin an entire sales cycle. And so I was like, what do I do now? Just nothing working out, right? Like I didn't succeed here, not succeeding here from things that I can't control. I was like, well, I'm in the insurance industry. I can go get a property and casualty license. So let me go talk to, the State Farms, the Allstates, the Progressives, the Geicos that are around my local area. So I printed like 10, 11, 12, something like that, resumes off. And I spent an entire day driving to all the big box property and casualty stores in the area that I lived in. Would walk in there, say, hey, I'm Adam Peters. I have
Yeah,
life and health insurance license. I'm licensed in these states. I'm more than willing to pay out of my own pocket to get a property and casualty license if you'll give me a shot. I had 4 job offers at different, locations that day. And I picked an Allstate agency, which work out. They had promised me some things that were right up my alley, getting a Series 6, 63 and Series 7 license so I could play with big boy money and really learn. I'm pretty adamant about learning about money and how it works. I don't know how it is over there, but here, you know, financial and fiscal education, it's terrible. People
yeah,
don't understand money, how money works, this, that, and the third. And so I'm pretty adamant about learning everything that I can to leverage it, learning about compounding interest, learning about where I should put money and how I can avoid paying taxes and things like that. So I was really excited about the opportunity to be able to get those licenses. One, because the Allstate agency was going to pay for them and they're not cheap. I think Series 7 by itself is like a $5,000 investment, and so long story short, I was there for 6 months. I was the only agent in the office selling anything at any given point. I basically kept his business afloat. The owner wouldn't talk to his book of business, basically wasn't even in the office half of the time.
mm,
So I quit, man. I was right
yeah,
before Thanksgiving. It was a 4-day weekend. They him, the owner, and the other employee in the office, they had disappeared for the whole week. Didn't even tell me. I was the only one in the office all week. So I just tendered my letter of resignation and left it on his desk in an
I love
envelope with
it.
the key.
I hope
Said
you
I'm not
slammed
coming
that
back.
one down as well, Adam. And slammed that
I
one.
did. It just didn't have the same effect because I was by myself
You're on
in
your
that
own. You're
office.
on your own. So
But
Adam, what an incredible story, and it sounds like you're taking the step in, Adam. What I liked about that is you're not shy about going into places and basically look, this is me, this is who I am. Come and help me. So how did you see you and them have gone through these journeys of jobs to where you are now, looking to help veterans? Yeah. So you must have seen something. There must have been something that hit you hard to go, I can see a problem here. I want to help. Is that right? Is that
yeah,
how did it come about? How did you go from all these jobs and building yourself up to basically, I need to help these people?
yeah. So, leaving the Allstate agency, I told my wife, you had given me 18 months. I failed. You can choose where we're going to go because she didn't necessarily like living in South Carolina. It's not really a great place to live. I've got family here in Florida. We had been visiting them. She says, I think I'd love to come to Florida. I was like, perfect. Let me go back to flight school. I'll first do that. I've got a little bit of money in the bank now. I can pay to get the certifications I need to teach and then ultimately get to the airlines. Long story short on that one, my logbook right before the check ride. The FAA, I had to write them a letter, send them a check, wait 4 to 6 months for them to say paperwork that I need. Picked up a job in the sod farms cutting grass. It was a pretty good job. I was making $1,000 a week after taxes and no responsibility. Just listen to books and podcasts. Listening to books and podcasts, I found the Sean Ryan show. Sean Ryan talked to other operators about plant medicine. And then he sat down after his journey with plant medicine and his wife interviewed him. And that was enough for me to start to pursue it. And by this point, I am at rock bottom. I own a 2012 Harley Davidson Road Glide with cammed out 103 in it, and it would go pretty quick. I'd find myself riding that thing a lot, thinking, man, all this just ends if I just run this into a tree at 120 miles an hour.
Wow.
Like a couple of times, I'm a avid gun owner. I love guns. I have our Second Amendment right, and
No, you're
there was
right. I ain't taking your gun off you, Adam.
I would oftentimes look at, I love pistols. I'm really good with a pistol. And I would look at some of my pistols and I'd be like, man, if I just put that in my mouth and pull the trigger, everything gets better. I don't have to deal with this shit anymore. And seeing that stuff on Sean Ryan's show, I was like, well, that's an option. And it's not going to the VA and getting on a pill cocktail that turns me into a zombie that still wants to kill himself. So, making another long story short, I got picked up by Heroic Hearts Project, and July 2nd through the 7th of 2023, my whole entire life changed. And
Yeah.
immediately came home from that and got to work, man. I started working on myself, started getting healthier, losing weight, changing the way I eat, which then kind of freed up some mental capacity for me to, pursue entrepreneurship. And I didn't really know what that looked like, but I just started taking action. I would meet some people who would influence kind of the direction I should be going. And then one random Sunday, I reached out to this bigger creator on LinkedIn as part of like a networking exercise. Said, hey man, I'd really love to learn from you. Would you be willing to meet me in person? I'll buy you coffee, and let me. He said yes. Spent 6 hours on a Sunday walking around Disney Springs with this guy, getting a master class in how I could, do something meaningful. His advice to me was like, you're not the guy that's going to get his message across on a LinkedIn post with a text and a photo. Have you thought about a podcast? And that's where I started, man. I started the podcast with the idea that the path back to purpose is entrepreneurship. But again, like I said, getting into those interviews, talking to people, I realized everybody's gone through something similar to what I went through, had the same thoughts, same feelings, same experiences in trying to fit in the civilian world and understand where we belong. And so I started hammering home on the transition and digging into that, man. And that's where I've come up with all the philosophies that I have and the ideas. And they're very clearly resonating with tons and tons of my brothers and sisters.
Wow. I love that, Adam. I love that. I want to ask you some quick fire round questions now. So, and this goes out to everybody who's here. Feel free to write in the comments anything that you want to ask Adam. So, a few questions, Adam. So, you talk about some of the most powerful things which helped you from that transition. You mentioned exercise and diet. Would you say that two of the most important things to get you onto the journey to the right place?
Yeah. So there's 5 things that I think are extremely important. And these are all talking in the context of health. So mental, emotional, social, spiritual, and physical health are all 5 very important things. And so it started for me by really changing the way I eat, understanding what I put in my body has consequences, understanding sugar is a terrible, terrible thing to be eating. And just different things like that. I also started participating in intermittent fasting, which, man, I don't even know how to describe that, but I took it to the extreme. I love fasting. It's what works for me. I will continue to do this for the rest of my life. It has so many physiological effects that we don't even know about other than just you think you're starving to death. If you really look at us as human beings, our ancestors didn't have access like we do, and they have to work to go get their food. And they would eat, maybe a high protein meal once every 2 or 3 days. You know what I mean? And so I started really adopting those philosophies. So at my peak, I was fasting 20 hours a day, every single day. And then once a week, I would throw in a 48 or a 72-hour fast, which I did for 3 months straight. So I think over the year that I lost the 100 pounds, I think there's 8,000 and some change hours in a year. I fasted for like 7,800 of those hours. It was
Wow.
ridiculous. In addition to that, I didn't have to do anything extremely physical. I just started walking, and I walk at a pretty quick pace, as much as my broken body, my bad back, my torn labrum in my hip will allow me. But I started walking 2 miles a day with the dogs at a pretty quick pace. And then I'd increase it and I'd increase it. And so now my daily routine before I do anything, usually depends on the day and what my schedule looks like, but I'm strapped the dogs up. We're out. So that's about a 14-minute mile each way. So that was I think those 2 things are the single biggest things that I did. But I also started employing the things that I had learned from the ayahuasca trip: yoga, meditation, breath work, grounding, abundance, gratitude mindsets. All of those things are free modalities that you can implement into your life right now, today, and really find a ton of healing in them and learn about yourself. And what do I mean by meditation? Man, a lot of things are meditation. Right now, for me, that's crochet. At one point in my life, that's been origami. It's not just sitting with your legs crossed and your eyes closed, alming, right? Like that is a form of meditation, but there's a lot of things that are a form of meditation. And understanding that yoga actually encompasses a lot of these things, right? It is meditation, it is breath work, it is movement of the body, and all of those things work in conjunction to balance you out and release that cortisol and make you feel good. And so, just adopting those philosophies and practicing those every day, being disciplined enough to stick to those things is how I got to the other side of all of that, and it's God.
Yeah, baby steps for those healthy habits. Yeah, absolutely. I've got 2 more questions for you, Adam. Your wise, healthy, strong self now goes back to a point where you was at your darkest times. What words of advice would you give yourself back then? What would you say to that person who was finding it really tough? Obviously, you are now. You know what you know now. What would you go
Yeah,
back and say?
I would tell myself to love and respect myself, and that I am way more capable than I or anyone else in my life has ever given myself credit. Those are the only pieces of advice I would need, because that's what I got out of my ayahuasca experience, amongst a lot of other things. But I think those are the most powerful things. I didn't love and respect myself, so I would talk to myself like absolute dog shit. And we know, science proves that is not healthy. and
Yeah.
and and understanding what I mean by, being capable of more than anybody's ever given you credit for is, it's okay that I don't want to play in the box that society says I have to play in. It's okay for me to build my own box and play in that box that aligns with who I am as a person and fills my cup up. I'm not here to please anyone other than myself.
Is there space in your box for me as well? And a coffee. We both be in that box. Sounds good. Sounds like a good
Yeah.
box.
Yeah.
Okay, last question. If anyone put any more questions, please type it in. My last question to you, Adam, is, and it might be similar. You might repeat what you've just said. This is Through the Fear podcast, but I think it might be similar to Unfuck Your Transition. So, for anybody out there who's finding it rough, anyone who's finding it difficult, they come to you. how would you tell them to either get through the fear or, in your words, fuck your transition?
Man, that's a really easy answer. You have to be willing to have the hard conversation with yourself, look in the mirror and answer those questions that you are avoiding. And we all have them. I have them. You have them. I still have them. I still,
Yeah.
it's a practice to have those conversations in the mirror with yourself. I'm working on launching, something that can generate revenue for me because I refuse to make money off of transitioning veterans and the personal brand that I've made. I won't get out. I have some imposter syndrome and some self-belief issues in my ability to launch this offer. So my struggle daily is looking in the mirror, telling myself that you are capable of this. You're doing this for the right reasons. You are doing this with good intention, and you are capable of bringing this to fruition. Stop sabotaging yourself. I would argue that you know, in my case, veterans getting out, you need to have that conversation with yourself. Look in the mirror. Who am I without the uniform? What are my beliefs? What are my values? What am I passionate about? And I don't mean surface level bullshit like I'm a dad, I'm a husband. Like Adam Teeters loves fucking motorcycles, loves to build things, and absolutely enjoys, whether I believe this or not at one point in my life, loves building relationships with people. That's who I am as a person. I genuinely want to help people. I want to build relationships with you. Look deep inside yourself to define those things. And then once you can do that, once you've defined your beliefs, values, and passion, define what success looks like to you. Don't let other people define what success looks like to you. And I promise you, you have a very, very clear picture of what direction to go in.
Wow, what a way to conclude that amazing podcast. So thank you, Adam. I will give one gem as well, though, Adam, which might be able to help you, and that is imposters don't feel imposter syndrome. So if you're feeling imposter syndrome, you can't be an imposter. So not
Brother,
everybody, yeah. So
you have no idea how much that actually helps because
yeah,
when you say it like that, instantly it's like, well, fuck then. What am I doing? Why am I
yeah.
standing in my own way?
Yeah, if real life imposters, not everyone gets imposter syndrome, but real life imposters, they don't care. They are imposters, and they so yeah. You can think, well, if I'm feeling it, it means you're not. You can't be an imposter if you feel imposter syndrome, which is an amazing way of putting it because you're thinking, you're caring so much
Yeah.
about that. So Adam, I'm gonna stop the recording now. If you can stay on just for another 30 seconds, I'm sure people might want to say thank you. There's already amazing things coming on through the chat. We've got Bev saying, I love that from your ending, your conclusion there. Nicholas saying, wow, we got amazing, great reframe and great motivation. So I want to say a big thank you, Adam, and everybody who's turned up again tonight. I love the people and some guests. It makes it so much, great having it live with the Wolfpack here. So, Adam, thank you so much for coming, and I'm sure our journey doesn't end here, mate, and we'll get to know each other a lot more in the future as well.
Well, thank you, man. It's truly, I'm super grateful that I'm invited to do this. It means the world to me to be able to be in a position to just share what I'm trying to figure out and see it resonating with people. I mean, I'm here to serve others. I'm here to improve in whatever way I can other people's lives. So I appreciate the opportunity to do that with your platform.
Bless you, buddy.